Right, guys, welcome back to episode 4, starting with the traditional hand clap, which signifies the start of a new episode. Today, we're going to be talking about 1% wins, the law of marginal gains. I'm slightly less prepared than Ollie in that he has brought his own branding, as you can see on his screen. I haven't brought any additional branding, just a very feminine bedroom. My own, might I add. So today we're going to be talking about 1% wins, and something that if you've been around the fitness industry for any period of time, which all of you will have, you will see a lot of content on social media, and I know Ollie's talked about this at length recently, about 1% wins, small marginal things that you can tweak. And we both wanted to start this episode with a big caveat and a preface that none of this will really make any blind bit of difference if you haven't got your big rocks in place first. So none of it will make any noticeable difference at all, in fact, if you aren't already taking care of the basics. So if you're one of the people who's watching this thinking, or maybe I've not got my nutrition or my training dialed in, or I'm not regularly turning up to do the big rocks, this stuff is going to have almost no effect. In fact, it might have a deleterious effect on the big rocks. So takeaway, if nothing else from this, is get your big rocks in check first. And for those of you who are doing that and turning up regularly, welcome. We're going to be talking about the 1% wins. I want to start by sharing somewhat of a description of what the law of marginal gains is. So popularised largely by the British cycling team, and now Sir Dave Brailsford. He kind of went into a BBC article and described it, and I want to share his words because he does a far better job than I can. And his description of the law of marginal gains is, the whole principle came from the idea that if you broke down everything you could think of that goes into riding a bike and then improved it by 1%, you would get significant increases when you put them all together. And that's absolutely the case. And that's something that Ollie and I are a big fan of, in terms of making small wins, making small progresses and tweaks to small areas, but getting the combined effect of all of those. So we've made a bit of a list of things that we're doing, and we want to share them with you and effectively share their positive benefits and how you can incorporate them into your life, so that rather than doing what I know I've been guilty of, and potentially yourself, Ollie, is just blindly copying things with a little bit of research and maybe not that much knowledge, and then being like, oh, why do my blue light block? I don't even know why I'm wearing these. I just look like the white Edgar Davids. I have no idea what they're doing. Like, I just look like Elton John because I've got a gap in my teeth, mate. Like, I look like I'm about to start blasting out Candle in the Wind when I put these on, and or Bono. It's not a great look. Anyway, so I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll ask Ollie to throw in his tuppence worth, and then from there we'll dive into a few 1% wins that you can implement.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was a great way to start it, and we both obviously discussed off air the importance of, just prefacing this with, make sure that you're doing the fundamentals first and foremost. And if you're not at that place yet where you're being super consistent with what's ultimately most important, with your training, nutrition, recovery, whatever it is, then this stuff comes after. You have to do it in sequence, because as Matt really usefully kind of pointed out there, can actually take away from your ability to make big leaps forwards if you start focusing on this minutia before the fundamentals. So I think we'll leave that there. We definitely kind of express that enough, and get stuck into some of the 1% wins that we can put in place. Do you know what? I reckon a good place to start, seeing as a lot of the guys and girls who are watching this potentially watch the morning routine video. Yeah. Maybe we could start with some of those and what sort of impact that can have.
In terms of the 1% win of the morning routine, or specific parts of it?
Well, I guess, yeah, maybe just the morning routine as a whole, and then maybe just individual parts. So, like the way that I'm looking at that is actually having a very specific morning routine that does a few certain things that sets up your day really well is going to be a 1% win, because you can still make huge progress with building muscle, losing body fat, without having a very specific routine that you go through in the morning. Like, let's not get that wrong, but can we potentially increase our likelihood of achieving all of those tasks by having a routine that is, in keeping with those goals? So again, going back to that whole notion of making sure we're doing the fundamentals first. Now that we've been consistent with those fundamentals, and we're starting to make some good headway with that, and we potentially want to speed things up or make marginal gains, now we can look at our morning routine and tweak that in a way that we're going to get those small wins. I guess we probably don't need to talk about it too much because we've got a whole episode on it. But what in your opinion, would you say are the biggest take homes from something like our morning routine that can cross over into health and fitness and things of that nature?
Definitely agree with that. And I think, again, hammering home that like it potentially doesn't matter unless you're doing the big stuff. But if we are, then I think for me, the getting up early and just that winning the first battle is so fucking important in terms of a mindset switch for every single client and every single viewer, in terms of going from like, maybe I'll train today, like that kind of like slave to your thoughts, to no, fuck it, I'm getting up, the alarm's gone off, it's time to get up. So that for me is potentially one of the most overlooked, but potentially one of the most beneficial 1% of that morning routine is the getting up on the first alarm. Also, just using my time to journal, putting the time that you're going to train in the diary. If it's not already in, before the day starts and before the day starts to steal your time, clients, friends and family, your children, your dog, whatever, start to steal bits of time. If you like, I know you trained this morning, and I'm fairly certain that will have been written down on a piece of paper somewhere this morning, that you knew you were training 8 a.m., 9 a.m., whatever time. So I think that's another, again, on the face of it, maybe seemingly quite airy-fairy, maybe, or what, you write down the time you're going to work out, well done, mate, is going to be the approach that people take. But it's the habitual doing that over and over and over that becomes concrete and makes training a non-negotiable very quickly.
And then, it's also reverse engineering that as well, Matt. You know, you mentioned that it might on the surface seem airy-fairy, but the reality is that people are going to come up to situations where they haven't scheduled in the time that they're going to train. Shit's going to get busy throughout their day, as happens with life. And for those that haven't scheduled in their training time and they don't know exactly when they're going to be training that day, it will take a back seat, and then that's a 1% loss. Obviously, I'm not going to use that number verbatim, but you get the idea, is that although it seems like such a small thing on the surface, it can have a huge impact over time. And that's the whole principle and the whole thought process behind the marginal gains, is that these tiny little things add up to huge results over time. And if you're constantly every single day prioritizing your training, making sure that that's scheduled in and it's physically written down, you are going to be far less likely to come into situations where you neglect your training, and that's going to have impact over the long run. That is the marginal gain. So you're right that it does seem airy-fairy on the surface, but it's really important, man, really important.
100%. I think it's important to point out that Ollie and I don't script these phone calls. Like we pick a title, we have a few key topics, and then we go for it. So often you'll see us agreeing, but it's agreeing in the most natural form, of terms of we haven't agreed that this is what we're going to talk about yet. And I think I'll add to that by saying, I'm really glad you started with this, because it's probably one of the most fundamental 1% wins of the Muscle Mindset Coach as a business is book yourself first, quote unquote, what we call book yourself first. And that's effectively just the act of writing down your training in the diary at a time that you're going to do it, as you would a doctor's appointment, a dentist appointment, a haircut, whatever. Because I think people are just like very much guilty of, and this goes for experienced and non-experienced trainers. This goes for, I know guys who've been training for a decade who still don't properly plan their training and occasionally miss sessions because they're like, oh, I'll train chest or push on Wednesday, and then it kind of doesn't happen because it was just a sort of idea. Whereas if you're going to train at 8 a.m. and it's in the diary, you become accountable to yourself, and I think that's a huge 1%. That's probably more than a 1%.
I mean, you mentioned there that fantastic saying or the one that you use with your clients is like, book yourself first. I often use, you can't serve from an empty vessel. And a lot of the backlash that I'll get from people who I'm working with who potentially aren't prioritizing themselves is they'll say, I've got family to look after, I've got this, I've got work, I've got clients, or whatever it might be. And I get that on the surface. But at the end of the day, you are the driving vehicle to look after those people. So the way that I try and put it forwards is, and Sophie and I have like a kind of motto that we live by. And our goal in life is not to look after one another. A lot of people will say is, oh, I'll look after you, you look after me. When the way that we look at it is, I look after myself, you look after yourself, and we're a stronger unit together because of that, So prioritizing yourself has the positive impact on the people around you that you want to help, just by the very nature of you being the driving vehicle to do that. So it's that old cliche saying of look after numero uno. You simply have to look after yourself first and foremost, because if you're not looking after yourself, you physically cannot look after the people around you.
100%. Totally agree with that, mate. And I think that's what sort of thing that people massively overlook is prioritizing themselves. And that's why I tell clients to put it in the diary and ideally train in the morning, because no one's inviting you out for a pint. No one's inviting you out for a pint full stop just now, but no one's asking you to do a Zoom quiz at 8 a.m. That's for sure. Another part of the morning routine that like I really rate is the cold shower. But again, caveat, it's not going to make a fucking blind bit of difference if you're not prepped in a number of other ways. In fact, I would imagine this is one of the ones that could have a more deleterious effect if you're already stressed out your box, potentially immune rundown. If you're stressed to high heaven, run down a bit, have some immune suppression, putting yourself under further duress, like stress in a cold shower, probably not the one. And I'm happy to admit that whilst I was unwell with my gut, I canned the cold shower on recommendation of the functional medicine practitioner, because she was like, your central nervous system, you're sympathetic all day, every day at the moment. Like you're fighting this infection so hard. By adding cold shower, all you're doing is stealing energy from that could be fixing something else. But assuming everybody's well and healthy and managing their stress to a degree, cold showers definitely help in terms of immune suppression, immune function. And in terms of, for me, I do it right before I jump on my morning call, and I'm completely alert and ready to go. You could quite easily do it before training it as a slap in the face, and it would sort you right out, I would imagine.
Yeah. Do you know what? I almost resent doing it before training, because I know I'm going to shower immediately after. So I can't get on with doing it immediately pre-training. But like you say, first thing in the morning, man, it's a huge slap in the face, and definitely sets your day up the way that you need it to. So, but yeah, and again, in agreement with the fact that you said it could potentially pull away from your ability to progress if other things aren't in place. So just be mindful of that if you are going to use the cold showers. Okay, that's cool, man. I think we've kind of exhausted the morning routine a bit, and we spoke about that at length on the other episode. So let's get stuck into some of the other things that could be beneficial in terms of just getting marginal gains. Might be an idea for us to look at sleep and recovery as a broader view. Some of the little things that we can do on a daily basis to just eke out more progress. And that's essentially what we're trying to do here. I think we can start by saying we are, as a generation, as a population, as a country, quite, bad for consuming caffeine all throughout the day. I know prior to knowing anything about sleep and recovery and things of that nature, I was a caffeine fiend. I would drink coffee. A lot of people, and I've got family members who will swear blind to me. You go to a restaurant, you go to an Italian restaurant,
I know what's coming,
and you finish your dinner at like 8 p.m. or whatever, and it's like, do you want coffees and biscuits? And yeah, I'll have an espresso.
Quadruple espresso, please.
Yeah, and you call them out on it, and you say, should you be having that at this time? And they say, oh, it helps me go to sleep.
Come again? I think, much like you, I've become somewhat of the family Nazi in people's eyes when they're like, you're shitting all over a family meal out. But I'm like, no, I actually care about your health. Like the way I care about mine. Like, what the fuck? It is 9 p.m. and you're about to neck a double espresso, and then potentially like an amaretto as well. So it's like alcohol and caffeine. Now, look, this is not like party pooper brigade. This is not like a rule for life all the time. But on the whole, the point that you're making is absolutely valid. I think people often are very quick to be like, well, actually, caffeine doesn't affect me.
Yeah,
it does me. We metabolize it differently and at different rates, and I think that's a discussion for another day. And I don't want to get bogged down in that. I think the point in these videos is to general broad brush. Caffeine will fuck up your sleep. End of. Like, it will completely and utterly obliterate the quality of your sleep. Moreover, it will do so without potentially your awareness of that happening. So just because your subjective awareness isn't that caffeine is ruining your sleep doesn't mean it's not happening. And actually, that's where things like Aura Ring, which we can potentially get into in a bit, will it shows me. I mean, I can see the complete and utter lack of deep sleep when I've had caffeine. So if I just run with this, then Ollie, then I think the point you were going to is caffeine cutoff.
Yeah, for sure. So
for my clients, for your clients, probably the same time. It's about 2:00 in the afternoon.
Based on I mean, the half-life of caffeine being about 6.5 hours, something like that.
Just like that broad brush, for most people, that's the half-life. Again, the metabolism dependent, but regardless, 2:00 in the afternoon, caffeine curfew, no more caffeine at that point is something that I run with my clients, you run with yours, and I 100% support in my own life. Like, I'm militant about that.
Yeah. So one of the big obstructions I come up against, and I'm not sure if you're the same. A lot of my clients will say they'll be like pre-workout junkies, and if they're training late in the evening, it's like I need my pre-workout, pre-training to get a good session in. And I think a lot of that is like a psychological crutch. I think a lot of that is a bit of dependence and feeling as though it's doing more than it potentially is. There are a lot of ingredients in pre-workout formulas that have you feel as though something is actively happening. Beta alanine being one of them. We were just discussing vitamin B12 prior to this, niacin, because if you can see, I've got like blood rushing to the surface of my skin. So I just had a dose of vitamin B12. Yeah, so it's the niacin brings the blood to the surface, and you get what's called niacin flush. The beta alanine causes that skin tingling sensation, and all of those things, when you take a pre-workout formula, give the recipient the illusion or the feeling that something is actively happening in their body. And people become quite reliant on that feeling of, I take my pre-workout, my skin starts to tingle, I'm ready to train. It's like this series of events that happens. But you're so worried about your training session that you're taking a pre-workout late in the evening. And we spoke about the half-life of caffeine. Most of these pre-workouts will be stimulant-based, or they'll have caffeine. In layman's terms, what that means is, if you were to take 350 milligrams of caffeine at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 hours later at 6 p.m., you're going to have 175 milligrams in your system still. So that's half of the amount that you took at 12. So the same is true for when you are taking a pre-workout prior to the gym. You know, you're taking potentially upwards of 500 milligrams of caffeine in some instances. You're laying in your bed, buzzing your tits off. That training in the afternoon/evening, maybe we can touch on this as well, in and of itself is going to create a response in the nervous system that puts us in that fight or flight mode, if you like, 100%. What we call our sympathetic nervous system. So we're exacerbating that by adding in a stimulant, caffeine. So you've got to be really honest with yourself, whether or not you think it impacts you or not. It is having an effect on your ability to sleep, which is having an effect on your ability to recover. It's causing huge health issues down the line. You've got to be really diligent with the caffeine consumption past a certain time, for sure.
100%. I think there's a physiological effect, whether you want to admit it or not. Like it's an indisputable fact, and you shouldn't be going to bed able to see sounds because you've taken so much pre-workout. So I mean, that's very important. And I think, like you say, training in the evening will naturally jack up your central nervous system, which is why I moved away from it. It wasn't because I particularly liked training. I used to train at lunch when I had a normal job. When I had a proper job, quote unquote, people always say that to me. I used to train at lunch. And now I'll train in the morning if I can, for that reason, that I just have some time to just bring it all back down. So caffeine 100% after 2 o'clock, like absolutely none of it. If I can avoid it, I just minimize it. I'll move to a decaffeinated tea of form, so you can still have a hot drink. It's like taking a cigarette smoker away from fags. You just give them something else. So be it vaping, be it those, remember the original e-cigarettes? It's just the action of putting something in your mouth. Oi, oi.
I knew you was going to say that.
I can't resist them, mate. Like I'm teeing them up. I'm going to knock them down. I'm going to leave that. I felt compelled to go after it again, but I'm just going to leave it before I ruin it. But again, by having a cup of tea or some other hot drink, you replace and can maintain the habit. But I think rather than continuing to bang on about caffeine, let's just give the general recommendation that a 2 p.m. caffeine curfew for an average person who isn't a shift worker, who, you know, that's another consideration in its own right. I think is absolutely paramount. Do we continue on sleep?
Take us somewhere else, Matt, with sleep. Now that we're kind of on that topic, there are obviously a few things that we can dive into with sleep.
So I think, like, let's just work through the day. So from the caffeine curfew, let's work towards bed from the caffeine curfew. Oh, Judy boy.
Hey, Judy boy.
There he is.
Boy. His cute little dungarees.
Wow. Well, legend. So we'll work towards bedtime. We'll get to sleep hygiene or whatever 1%ers there. But for me, the next thing is absolutely doing your best to just create a feeling of calm throughout your day. I will actively change the type of music I listen to throughout the day. Like I will be, as you know, sometimes we'll come on these calls and I've got some filthy banging playlist on, like the dirtiest of dirty playlists playing. Got my nasty face on, dancing away. But I will actively bring that down. And then around the kind of evening window when the sun naturally starts to set, I look for my clients having, I can't claim this term, it's Luke Lehman's, is electronic sunset. Big fan of that. So putting the fucking phone down is absolutely paramount. And this is going to be the hardest 1% for everybody, is detaching from it. Now, while your phone has blue light, you know, it goes yellow, it's still having an effect. That I just completely and wholeheartedly refuse to accept the fact that that just eradicates all blue light. The TV, fluorescent lights in your house all have blue light. Now, you have options. You can just replace all the bulbs with those Philips Hue. It's going to be incredibly expensive. And if your missus is anywhere near as house proud as mine, she's absolutely not going to let you. Like, Sarah would actually rather that I look like Elton John than her house be bastardized with yellow light bulbs. So now I'm going to play Candle in the Wind. These are like, this is probably, in my opinion, the most obvious 1% win that I see people doing with absolutely no fucking clue why they're doing it. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I'm not here to berate those people, and I'm not trying to belittle that. I actually applaud it. But in an attempt to clear it up, let's keep them on for this part.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the cover.
That's a thumbnail. That's a thumbnail.
100%. So blue light blocking glasses, effectively in the evening, exposure to blue light isn't something that, from a more primordial perspective, we ever were exposed to. So our circadian rhythm, which effectively is your internal clock, which governs the expression of hormones throughout the day. Neurotransmitter and hormones come at different times in different amounts to signal whether you should be awake, asleep, so on and so forth. Now, naturally, we woke and slept with the sun up and sun down, respectively. What that led to was, as you know, if you go out at sunset, there's a lot of orange light in the atmosphere. There's not a lot of blue light the way there is in the morning, that far more intense blue light. So naturally, we don't do that anymore. We stay up later, but B, we fill our house with artificial light, which is, on the light spectrum, the equivalent to morning light of days gone by. So effectively, you're telling your circadian rhythm all the time it's time to wake up. Like, all the time you're signaling to your internal body clock, hey, look, it's not actually nighttime. It might be 10 p.m., but we've got like Blackpool going on in our living room. Like, so genuinely, your body has no clue. So by putting these on, what we can start to do is mimic the effects of a sundown of days gone by and start to signal to your circadian rhythm, hey, look, it's maybe time to start creating some serotonin, which is the precursor to melatonin, which you will largely understand to be the neurotransmitter responsible for sending you to sleep. So blue light will do the opposite. Exposure to blue light, especially later on in the evening when naturally you should be winding down towards bed, will actually blunt serotonin production, thus blunting melatonin production, thus your ability to fall asleep. And if your ability to fall asleep is in any way compromised, it could be exposure to blue light. And for me, for the cost of these, I don't know what you paid for yours, $70 for these bad boys. The rest of the Elton John outfit costs significantly more.
Exactly.
The grand piano cost even more. It all got a bit out of hand. But
the silver jacket.
That's it, mate. And the earring. I should have done that. I've actually got my ears pierced. I should 100% have done that. Disappointed in myself. So look, I've spoke for long enough there. I'm going to pass that one to you rather than this becoming the Matt Peacock show.
No, I'm in agreement with all of that, mate. I think you've done a really good job of explaining the kind of nuances and science of that as well. That looks amazing. I need to try that as well. I've never tried that.
Oh, me.
Yeah, you did a really good job of explaining the ins and outs of why we use blue light blocking glasses and the effect that's having hormonally. But also, again, I think a nice point to touch on that as well is it's not even just the blue light with the phone thing and putting the phone down and having this wind down procedure. We also know that as we go to sleep, what we should see is the stress hormone, which is cortisol, should come down like this. And then as we begin to wake, cortisol should come up, and that's almost like our cue to wake. And it's actually serving a purpose there. But what generally tends to happen is we're staying up late. And even if we're using blue light blocking glasses, we've got these guys on, we're scrolling for our phone immediately prior to going to bed. What happens is you like a picture of a thick porg on Instagram, your missus sees it, you get in an argument, you get in a heated debate, maybe someone just triggers you on Instagram or whatever. And that causes a cortisol response where you see that stress hormone going up, and that's inhibiting your ability to onset sleep, to get into sleep. So it's multifaceted. It's not even just the blue light. The blue light is obviously plays such a huge role in our circadian rhythm, but just being triggered on Instagram, it's so easily done. So for me, my general rule of thumb is you know, I finish work at X time, I have a little bit of social media time, and then the phone goes in the office and it stays there, and I don't touch it because I don't want to have those scenarios where I'm getting triggered on social media or whatever, or getting pissed off with emails. So having a wind down protocol is really, really important, and again is a marginal gain and ties in quite nicely with the blue light blocking glasses.
I'm going to add to the fact that you have that, because I often can't get in touch with you after a certain time, much like people can't get in touch with me. Yours is obviously just slightly earlier than mine, but that is, the wind down is key.
For sure. And I think that's probably just because my to bed time is maybe a little bit earlier than yours.
And then also asking your partner to enforce it. So if you can get them on board, Sarah's really good at enforcing. If she catches me scrolling,
have a go.
She'll be like, "Hey, get off, no Instagram." And to be fair, we've now got to the point where that reinforcement isn't required because I've been conditioned. But see what I did there? But I would suggest that the only way you're going to get rid of that habit is by replacing it with another. Like the cup of tea again. Like you're not going to be able to just stop drinking coffee, keep drinking hot drinks. Much like if you're used to scrolling and doing something, I read. And I read something that isn't work related. I'll just read something that I want to read. And see the blue light blocking glasses and a book, and they actually exist, guys. There is these paper things, a real book that you can use. That I will start yawning within about 5 minutes. Like I am lights out after half an hour of reading.
It's your cue, isn't it? It's like your cue. Is, you know that you're preparing for bed, and bed for you should be a place where you sleep. So again, I guess we could probably just quickly touch on the things. It's where the magic happens. But it's, you know, what you don't want is to associate your bed with this stressful place, and that often inadvertently happens when you're waking up first thing in the morning, checking Instagram, checking work emails. You're immediately creating this connotation, this association between bed and stress, and bedness needs to be a place for sleep and the good, and that is it. So removing your phone from the room is massive, unless you're using it for
another thumbnail. There's thumbnails all over this one. It's abundant in epic thumbnails. I think that is a great segue for me to take it into the next one then. So I talk to my clients about making their room like a sanctuary. It's not a fucking office. So do not work, and we've covered that. I'm not going to go down that again. So the next step towards making the room a chill place amongst sexy time place, great success, is we have a oil diffuser next to our bed. So I'm a big fan of this, and this is going to be one of those ones that quite quickly polarizes people whether they're going to go with it or not. My mum was by trade a physio and aromatherapist, so like I was like, I've had it hammered into me that you shouldn't take any pills or tablets. You should just use essential oils unless your leg's hanging off, in which case it's probably time for the hospital. But for me and for us, we use a diffuser, and actually I can just grab it, the stuff that we use in it. We use this essential oil. So Tisserand Sleep Better, class. And the Total De-Stress one, what you'll start to do is, yes, these oils will have an effect on helping you sleep. There's enough information to say that lavender oil probably helps with relaxation and sleep. For those of you who are like, well, still no, my next argument for doing it is you start to create an associated smell with sleep. So you start olfactory, this thing, mine is bigger than yours probably, that's what she said, is this is a weapon, this thing. You can smell what diffuser oil I was using last week with this thing. So by using oil and by creating a smell that you associate with bed, you can actually start to almost Pavlov's dogs yourself into, oh, that's that smell. So we'll put it on about an hour before bed, and it will run for a couple of hours after we fall asleep. So you're still inhaling it and still experiencing it. And I think, especially on nights where you're really struggling to wind down, that 1% can be big for me. I will keep a specific, like this oil wouldn't be used in a diffuser elsewhere in the house. I use like a peppermint one next to my desk that does the opposite. That's another 1% win.
Yeah, the smell thing is huge and massively overlooked. It's like so deeply ingrained into your psyche. I recently had some CBT, some cognitive behavioral therapy, and the scent thing was, you what, sorry?
I said, you're still an arsehole though.
Yeah, definitely. But the smell thing was massive. Like we were trying to work through what's triggering this response, why are we potentially feeling this? Can we associate anything? And it ended up being a smell. And you don't even realize that shit's happening. And that's one of the great things about CBT is it opens your eyes to why things happen and how things potentially happen. And actually knowing that is really powerful. It's like knowing that if you associate the smell of lavender with sleepy time, that is powerful. So don't disregard that stuff, and don't kind of knock it until you've tried it. It's a really, really useful tool.
100%. And you know what? It works with kids as well. Like Nixon uses, it was actually Tom, TM Cycles, that I got the other one from. It's down there. I can't be bothered getting it. The Lush spray that you can put on. It's actually for your clothes, but I put it on the bed sheets. Nixon uses it. He calls it sleepy spray. And honestly, mate, it's like he's going into a coma if he uses it. Unbelievable. So yeah, massively overlooked his sense of smell for both alertness and sleeping. And also another 1% win CBT if you're wanting to get into the nitty gritty. I've never done it, but my dad does a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. I had it just for some, I guess, issues that I was having. But it works in so many different areas of your life. So
I just use Viagra for that, mate.
Mate, fuck it. I've probably tried Viagra twice, and I really, really get like my face goes swollen and red like a tomato.
Because you're a dickhead, mate. Oh yeah.
Yes. But obviously that's what it does, right? Is it pushes blood to the surface, but it goes more to my face than anywhere else, which obviously isn't useful.
Well, I'm not sharing my Viagra experiences because they'll be used against me in a court of law.
Fair one. Yeah, we don't want that. What else should we discuss? We probably got time for one more, I would imagine. Should we go into a different tangent?
You want to grab one? I'm happy to take one. If not, we've got a few guys.
So we did caffeine. We did basically like sleep hygiene to some extent.
Covered daylight exposure, oils, smell. We've got effectively a couple other things, like we talked about potentially the use of nootropics, and we spoke about potentially the use of meditation, journaling, gratitude. And just so that, let's just list them for now, and we might not go into them, and we may go into some of these in future episodes. And we also discussed HRV, and then we discussed the human charger, the thing that we've discussed in previous episodes, the light buds in your lug holes.
I spoke to that at length with Dean yesterday, actually, for my training lab for my clients, because obviously we were talking about sleep hygiene for shift workers. And he highly recommends like a day lamp for shift workers who are working during the day. He hadn't heard of the human charger, actually, so I think he's going to grab one of those. But yeah, it's the human charger is really useful, really, really cool. But again, we've touched on that in the other episode, haven't we?
I mean, it's worth saying there's 60% off it right now, so if folk are wanting to get one, now's the time. Okay, so moving on to another, like, let's just kind of take a couple and run with them and turn them into one conversation so that we don't overrun too much. And people, I know you guys probably don't want to watch much more than half hour. Not that you're not interested, but Ollie and I discussed previously that half an hour, 40 minutes is enough for our attention span when we're the viewer. And the last thing we want is these to turn into absolute monologue where you just switch off. So we want to keep them short and punchy. So the other two that kind of are left standing is nootropics and then the meditation, journaling, gratitude. So I utilize nootropics. I think they are probably one of my favorite 1% wins. They're probably like, I was first introduced to nootropics. So nootropic is effectively, let's go down it with the view towards adaptogens. I think that's probably the best way to go here. Adaptogenic herbs such as like ashwagandha, rhodiola, schisandra, these sorts of things that, again, 1% wins. They're going to do hee-haw. If you've just taken a shitload of pre-workout, there's probably not much, there's no amount of ashwagandha you can take that's going to chill you back out. Even down to things like L-theanine, we can look at those things whereby they're 1% wins that we can start to change our state. You will hear largely in the industry that flip the switch thing that's everywhere. I'm a big fan of it. I think a lot of people say it without truly understanding what they're doing. And effectively, like we've touched on several times in this episode already, moving from a sympathetic fight or flight to a parasympathetic rest and digest is going to be paramount. And likewise, kind of the opposite. So the pre-workout doing the opposite, turning you into the fight or flight, we need that. We need a stress response in training, but you certainly don't need when you're in bed. So looking at, I use Motion Nutrition Unplug. I'm not married to that product. I just like I like the makeup. Dr. Dean's Sleep Stack is like my nighttime go-to regardless. I don't think you're going to find a much better supplement than that for it.
No.
And other than that, I will use adaptogens and nootropics, like I usually take some of the Strom Sport Max Neuro with a coffee and some nicotine prior to doing one of these. That's like my YouTube stack for being in the zone and having quick witty banter, because without it I've got none.
Without it you're nothing.
Nothing, mate.
No, do you know what? I've always been, especially with supplementation around things like ashwagandha, the research in there is improving all the time, and actually to the point where one of my favorite resources for any supplementation, which is examine.com, just put out an article recently just saying, actually, things are looking really good for ashwagandha. So, you know, prior to that point, you'll have all the kind of abstract readers saying, oh, there's not much research and you shouldn't be wasting your money. But so I just turned into you there, didn't I, mate? I did.
Brian, that's Brian, our local neighborhood watch wanker. You can use him. He's ours. Okay,
I was just Brian briefly there. But actually, you know, there's some good research coming about from ashwagandha, and I use it myself. I use it within Support Max Neuro, and I've also got it as a standalone supplement as well. I use L-theanine, and it's that whole thing of when you're driving to the gym, playing heavy metal or some crazy dance tracks. When you're driving home from the gym, you want some chill out beats that kind of bring things down. And the supplementation side of things are basically doing that for you to some extent. They're kind of leading you that way. But it's important. It's really, really important. And it's not, again, going back to the whole overriding topic of this discussion, is it's important once you're doing the basics well. Beyond that, if you're seeking out these marginal gains, these are things that you can look at. But realistically, it's not going to mean jack shit if you are barely showing up to the gym on a weekly basis. Your diet is shit. You don't get between 7 and 9 hours sleep. Don't even concern yourself with this stuff.
100% agree with that. I think, just to give the example that you just gave a little bit more meat, is say you're driving home from the gym and you've taken a bunch of ashwagandha. Maybe you've taken Support Max Neuro because you've seen it popularized as something to help you, quote unquote, flip the switch, but you're still listening to Five Finger Death Punch. No amount of ashwagandha, like you're doing both things at once. So I guess that's kind of like the overarching theme for this whole thing, is get your big rocks in place. But the second part for me is ultimately, and this comes back to, you know, when people are like, well, actually, there's not enough studies on ashwagandha yet. It's like, oh, thanks, mate. I think to that end, I would say to people that if it works by way of placebo or not, does it fucking matter if it was a placebo or not? In my own personal opinion, no. Like, if you're going to, and again, to add to that, and exactly what I say to my clients is, if the only perceived negative is financial outlay that you have available to you, you have the disposable to buy the $19.99 ashwagandha tablets, like Supplement Needs is where I get most of my kit like that. It's inexpensive. And if you have the disposable and that's the only real perceived negative, what have you got to lose?
Exactly.
And then if it works, and you're never going to be able to prove whether that's a biochemical response, physiological response, or whether it's just placebo, or indeed placebo driving a biochemical or physiological response. It doesn't matter to me. As long as it's improving things, or you think it's making an improvement,
that's
all I'm looking for with every client. 1% wins can be as much a subjective opinion as they are an objective. You can't quantify these things largely. Do I get tired when I put my blue light blocking glasses on and read because of the blue light blocking, or because of the ritual of wearing the blue light blocking and because of the associated and anticipated effects?
Doesn't fucking matter.
It doesn't fucking matter what your name is.
We just went all WWE there.
Fucking love that. That was WWF, mate. None of that.
WWF.
No WWE. And when I was,
they got taken over by the World Wildlife.
Yeah, they weren't happy with it. They had the panda on their logo. Remember that? And they were like, you can't have these guys in spandex. It's that brand.
It doesn't.
I've recently introduced Nixon to WWF, and he now regularly tells me that he's either he's a fan of an alter ego. He regularly becomes Scotty Too Hotty, or as he calls it, Scotty Too Hotty, and then quite often then becomes Rikishi, mainly because I don't know if you remember Stink
with the arse, yeah.
Yeah, stink face. So I showed Nixon stink face on YouTube, and now at every possible opportunity, if I'm napping, lying in any position, stink face, it just comes and fucking tries to stink face you.
Sophie's ex-boyfriend was a professional wrestler, and she like said something to him one day about it not being real, and he was like genuinely taken aback and offended. Like, what do you mean it's not real?
Unreal.
Amazing.
WWF for the win, though, mate. I'm delighted by that. I'm glad we touched on that. It's not a 1% win. It's just a brilliant bit of nostalgia.
What's going in the bin this week, mate?
WWE for starters. If you're a WWE fan, other than potentially John Cena, we should have started with that. I usually put that tune on when I've got clients walking into something. I do a seminar where I have the John Cena Can't See Me theme tune playing when it starts. I fucking love that as intro music. What's going in the bin? What's going in the bin is abstract readers.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. That's what I was going to say.
So for clarity, some people might not know what that means. People that will go on PubMed and read just the abstract and the conclusion, and then be like, well, actually, I read a paper. You didn't read a paper. You read 2 paragraphs. And it says there's not enough conclusive evidence to say that ashwagandha actually increases feelings of tiredness, or lavender oil, or blue light blocking glasses. It's like, well, no, you're right. Again, but if you have the disposable, then bash on. What else goes in the bin? I'm trying to think of other things that were.
We didn't really slate anything too much today, to be fair.
Nah.
Which is usually where the bin element comes from.
But I mean, we put something in the bin. Abstract readers, just don't be married to the idea you have. If you're willing to change your perspective, and again, I want to stress this again, if you have the disposable and that's the only perceived negative, I would implore you to experiment, as long as it's within the realms of safety. Like, don't be this. We're not talking about anything illicit. We're talking about 1% wins. Try it and suck it and see. That's what she said. Third the episode. It's doing well, Matt. Well done.
Mega man. I think that pretty much. Well, we'll probably revisit, because there's a few more things that we could probably go over, isn't there, in terms of like marginal gains. But like you said, we don't want to make these episodes super, super long. So I think that's enough for today. But we'll likely revisit this further down the line. And these things are always changing as well. And we're always finding new things that we think are beneficial that you guys can potentially make use of. So we will revisit this. Let us know if it's been useful. How do we want people to let us know? Is it John Cena?
Well,
don't do more than 15 seconds, because we'll get banned off YouTube.
We're not going to get done from YouTube now. Is it 15 seconds? Is that the rule?
I think so, yeah. I think so.
Right, guys. Well, then we might end up making this 4.1 and then have a 4.2. We'll see. It might come later on, but like Ollie says, there's more to cover. But in the interest of keeping them short and sweet, we shall shut the fuck up and leave you guys alone. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining. We'll speak to you on the next episode.
Peace.